Welcome back for another Riftbound recap video, and today we have 5 new spoilers to dive into. And if you're a calm enjoyer like myself and some of the legends felt a little bit lacking, or one in particular, well, today we finally got a key spell which I think is really going to turn the tide and give this deck some legs to start playtesting today in the current environment. So without further ado, let's dive in. So up first, we have to talk about Rune Prison. This is a 2 energy, 1 power spell with action timing that stuns a unit. Now, by itself, this is just a great spell to have access to in Calm, because if your opponent is trying to attack you with a single large threat, you can simply say, nope, I'm going to shove that thing into a little baby jail, and you do not deal any damage for this round, and then we'll have to retreat because you failed to conquer. So just by buying yourself an extra turn, it can be incredibly strong. But what's most important is how this is going to combo with Leona Radiant Dawn Legend effect. That one is going to give you a free buff when you use this, but also combos very well with their key finisher, the Eclipse Herald, which is going to allow you to restand it and get some extra buff counters. So we really were missing another cheap, effective way to stun some key cards in the Leona deck. Of course, her signature spell is just insane for what it wants to be doing. And while I think this is a very clear winner for Leona and what she wants to be doing, this is just a card that I'm very excited to see how it plays out in the current meta environment. And because we do know that we are getting sideboards in the future, this is, in my opinion, something that is 100% going to take the slot of any sideboard in Calm because of how strong it can be. Again, if we see more of a go tall strategy like the Lee Sin decks that are going to stick to the battlefield and have like a 10 or 12 or 14 might card and go all in, this can very quickly and easily win that battlefield for you. So for that reason, I think Rune Prison is a card that we are going to see, well, an absolute 3 of in the Leona decks for all the reasons I provided and just being so strong at what it wants to be doing, but absolutely a 2 of in every other Calm deck, with the 3rd copy of the card likely making a spot in the sideboard just because of how versatile this can be. Now, keeping in mind the downside of this card is that if you are playing against a go wide strategy, like we have seen with the Victor deck in creating tokens, or even Jinx because they can just get a bunch of flame chompers online, then unfortunately this card is really not going to do much for you. Stunning a simple 2 might card when you're already going to be down on the number of units you have on that battlefield is likely not going to be enough to win that victory or win that contest for you. However, when we think about the other tools that we have access to in Calm, that we have Discipline, which is going to give us more might, there are other ways that we can get back into the battlefield, and that was what really makes Calm so special, is that we have so many versatile tools within the domain that for those that are really excited about deck building and want to find the right pieces, then Rune Prison and the other cards in Calm, I think, are going to be true MVPs to look forward to. Now, moving on from there, we have Last Stand. This is a 3 energy, 1 power spell card with the action timing that states double a friendly unit's might this turn, give it temporary, which means before you were to score that battlefield, you have to kill it. Now, this is a very interesting card that I'm curious to see how it's going to line up in the meta, because we are most likely going to see some additional cards with the keyword tank, which I'm just using set here as an example based on our last gameplay video and knowing how big this guy can get, right? The challenge here is that for Last Stand to ultimately be the most effective, we want to have a card with tank so that your opponent is forced to assign enough combat damage to get rid of that card so they can chip away at the rest of what you have at that battlefield. With Set in particular, we know that this is quite easily to get up to even 10 power if you're going all in on the buff strategy. And then if we were to double this to 20, it's just going to be able to hold the throne by itself, that your opponent's most likely not going to win with combat damage. However, again, because we are going to be using the temporary keyword getting assigned to this, it is going to remove itself. So I have to wait for this card to get more spoilers as we get more cards that have tank. I think this is something that definitely could be very good. And yes, we could absolutely see Set making an appearance in the Leona deck because we know that we're going to have multiple ways to get buffed units in that deck. But we ultimately have to wait and see where else this is going, because it does feel very much like a Hail Mary, very, very flavorful in that regard, but it is something that's going to require some very careful planning to make sure that you can execute that game plan to give you that final point. So Not a card that I am excited to run 3 of and have it all the time appearing in my, deck, but something that I could definitely see making a one-of splash that could really come in clutch in some key moments, and definitely something that you are building your deck with it in mind. Again, putting this on a unit and then your opponent just killing off the rest of your battlefield without having, tank to soak up that damage is going to feel really bad. So we do have a few different options that we can lean into in terms of how we're stacking up the buffs. And again, I think Set just does the greatest example of this, because at least in our gameplays footage so far, Set can get very big, and doubling it is for sure going to make sure that your tank unit lives. But this is, again, something that I have to be very cautious against, wholly recommending, if only because it is going to be very difficult to get the most out of it. So will Last Stand make an appearance in decks once we get the full reveal spoilers? Again, I think it's a one-of, but I also would not be surprised at all if this does get completely cut just based on how the meta is shaping up. Now, moving on from there, we have one that I am very excited about, is Taric. So a 4 energy, 1 power, and 4 might champion unit. It has shield, which means it gets +1 as a defender. It has tank, which again, we're seeing kind of the theme here with tank and being a key word of the day that we're really excited to see. And then other friendly units here have shield as well. And what's really interesting, and just a general good card for Calm as well, very defensive for what it wants to be doing. If you have a more go wide strategy with Calm units, of course, you're getting extra value there out of the shield wording for defense. But what's really interesting about this card in particular is how well it is going to then further combo with Ahri. As your opponent is trying to attack you, they're going to be getting -1 might just from Ahri's effect. And then you're also getting a +1 might bonus in that regard from Taric if he is on that battlefield. So just by existing, you have a minimum of a 2 might swing, which means your opponent is going to have to do a little extra work to try and combat that battlefield if they wish to conquer it. Now, we also know this is going to combo very, very well with the blue Ahri that we were talking about, which is a little bit weak to removal, so we'll have to find the best way to protect it. But if you're able to line up a battlefield that has both Taric and the blue Ahri, it's going to be very difficult for your opponent to swing into this, especially with the shield, going 1-for-1 against their token. So this is one that I'm very excited to see where it ends up. Definitely, for me, sticks out as a card that I'm excited to brew with, and I'm very curious to see where the rest of the Ahri deck goes, because it does want to be more defensive in nature. But we have this, we have Sona so far, we have the Taric. There's quite a few good Calm units or green units so far that the deck space is definitely starting to feel a little bit more limited, when we also factor in that we want to be playing a bunch of spells in this combination because of how good those various battle tricks are. So again, from a deck building perspective, I think if you're someone who really likes tinkering with the deck building choices and really trying to min-max the most amount of value, Calm decks are most likely going to be your favorite. But when we have Calm and Mind together in the case of Ahri, I think there's just extra, unique choices that you can really combine and make it the most deck builder's paradise colors, at least that we have for set 1. Now, moving on from there, we have Fiora, and boy, does this combo give me a little bit of throwback PTSD for Legends of Runeterra. If you remember the glory days, or maybe the frustrating days of all-in mono Fiora, well, she's back, and she's going to be even more annoying to kill somehow, when going with Set of just being able to make sure that she always goes back to the base and gets to live to see another day. So Fiora is a 4 energy, 4 might champion unit. When I have Mighty, so when they have 5 might, it gains deflect, ganking, and shield. And as a reminder, I just have all the keywords down there, but it's harder to target, it's going to get to move battlefield, and it's even better on defense. And because we've already seen Set do wonders with Arena Bar, and we're going to have a way to just always give Fiora a buff counter, yeah, this is kind of scary. It becomes a 5 might unit that your opponent just has to think about how in the world they're going to navigate it, and it's going to give you some free points. And then with Set's legend ability, you just say, I get to bring this back every single turn to my base, and good luck dealing with it, right? And we've already seen a few cards in order that go quite well in just building up this strategy and making sure that we're getting the most out of those buffs. But I think the other key note that we just have to talk about in the same breath as this one is the other spoiler. We got Primal Strength with a 4 energy, 1 power spell with action timing. Give a unit +7 for this turn. the combo of these two plus in the set deck that you're, again, want to be running because of the way the buff strategy is going to be working, this is pure nightmare fuel for those of us that had to live through that meta. And I am looking forward to seeing how this all comes together because, you know, outside of the ramp deck, we really haven't seen more of a all-in strategy. I should say outside of ramp and specifically the Lee Sin champion card. We haven't seen too many other like all-in protection or all-in one-trick champions being the main focus strategy. And while we don't have a Fiora champion, or excuse me, legend right now to go with this champion that we can always start the game with it, I think this is definitely a card that you're willing to see 3 of, being the Fiora, to always stick to that game plan. And again, it's just something that your opponent's gonna have a very difficult time figuring out how they want to play around it. And then don't forget, we also have Showstopper if for some reason you need extra movement, but because Fiora has ganking, because we have other ways we can activate it within Mistfall, yeah, this is going to be a very annoying card to play against, and I can't wait to see what decks come together to celebrate this champion and really showcase that all-in Fiora strategy that we have seen in the past with Legends of Runeterra. And Primal Strength, I also just want to give a good shout out to in general. A +7 might swing is just nasty by itself. Now we'll have to wait and see if there's other cards that either care about mighty that might really benefit from this, or that might have other, you know, if your might is over 10, right? If we see some kind of payoff like that, other than Kedgren, which is in the Volibear deck, right, of having extra draw, I'm really curious to see where this one lands overall, just because of having such a strong might swing in one card. Right, this is worth effectively 2 or 3 cards, depending on the situation, from your more calm players. Now, they might have the deny anyways to get rid of it and not, you know, ruin your fun, as it were. But this is a card that is going to require an answer, or your opponent is going to lose a lot of their board. And when we also have things like Udyr that we can stun whatever their biggest guy is, and then back it up with this is just the ultimate crush down hammer. I think this does give us a lot of love for the more go tall strategy in some units to conquer those battlefields. So if you are trying to line up like a, you know, 15 might swing just to try to really get out of the range of what interaction or removal your opponent might have, then I think Primal Strength can absolutely be a key contender for those deckless spots, just because it is so much might that you're getting out of a single card. It does cost a power, but all things considered, when you're getting that much of a swing and likely getting rid of a couple of your opponent's cards, I'll pay 1 power for it all day long. And then up next, we have KogMa. And I gotta be honest, I have no idea where this guy is gonna end up going. A 3 energy, 1 power, 1 might champion unit, but has a really interesting death knell effect. Deal 4 to all units at my battlefield. So what's interesting about this, or at least the assumed working of this card at the time of recording, is that you'll get to go into a battlefield, deal the 1 damage. It's gonna die because it's only 1 might, and then KogMa is gonna just effectively explode at that location. So if there's a 5 might unit on that battlefield, you'll also knock it out before the damage heals at the end of that showdown. So KogMa itself is more of a where does this fit kind of situation, and ultimately we don't really know yet. I think this one is going to be very meta dependent, right? If my opponent is playing all-in token strategy and they're trying to go super wide with Victor, then I'm happy to play something like this. This is guaranteed going to, you know, wipe out their protection they had on that battlefield unless they have like a grand stratagem. And because we are in chaos or purple, we also have ways to loop this back with the cemetery dog, getting it back from our trash, as well as the important note of Yasuo just giving this something that can just move when we need it, right? So it is something that if we're at a battlefield, your opponent maybe didn't attack into it because they don't want to sacrifice their units to conquer the battlefield, right? This is just a great, hey, don't attack me card, or you're going to lose whatever you're sending into it. Yasuo very quickly says, okay, I'm going to move it back to my base instead from the battlefield, which keeps it active. And then KogMa is going to go send himself into the other battlefield. So your opponent is faced with this lose-lose situation of like, no matter what, I have to send something into this card. And Yasuo gives us the extra flexibility of getting that additional movement we need to threaten it between both of the battlefields. So this is one that I think, at least for right now, is a big question mark for me of where it's going to find a home. Sideboard option, absolutely, in my opinion, just because if we do see the rise of tokens, I think this will be one of the best answers that we have, at least so far at the time of recording. Just dealing 4 damage to everything is really going to make your opponent think about how they want to play around it. But then again, I think with Yasuo having the extra flexibility of moving cards and making sure that we have other ways to sneak in extra movement in our turn that your opponent might not be expecting, I think this one is going to be a pretty fairly exciting combo to pull off, and really puts, again, our opponent in an awkward position of not wanting to sacrifice units into the battlefield to try to conquer it, because it's going to effectively take 2 different movements, which then frees up the other battlefield that you were most likely holding, that they no longer have the resources to challenge, giving you another point while also removing some of their cards. So a card that I like, again, just not sold yet where it's going to go, but I think it's a very interesting kind of situation that you put your opponent in based on trying to hold the battlefield and then always threatening the extra move with Yasuo when they might least expect it. So very exciting to see. We'll have to wait and see for more spoilers if we get other ways to maybe remove this card. Like, the one thing that really stuck out to me immediately is like, oh, if we had some type of self-sacrifice effect, right, we can put it on a battlefield and then in combat pop it if we really need to, right? Unfortunately, we can't put Chaos and Order in the same deck, so we can't just hidden blade it for the ultimate, value that we want to see. Pop our own guy, draw 2 cards, deal 4 to the battlefield, right? But we'll have to see where this ultimately finds a home in other Chaos cards, because there's a few that have the Death Knell effect already, so there might be something else coming, or this might be more of like a set 2 thing where we see more of the sacrifice style play a role in Chaos, because generally when we see purple from other card games, there is usually a sacrifice element as well as a recursion from your cemetery, trash, sideline, what have you, element to it. So I'm curious to see if the devs were already kind of planning for that direction, or is this just something that is, well, it's super flavorful, right? At the end of the day, it's awesome that KogMa has this level of flavor built into it, but I hope that it does have some type of role in the future. So that's all for today's Riftbound recap. Definitely know what your favorite card is down below. Did your legend finally get that key piece it was missing, or are you still waiting for more spoilers to come? We'll definitely look forward to more Riftbound content in the near future, because we have more spoilers coming up on Wednesday and Friday. So make sure to like and subscribe for future Riftbound content. But until then, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.